What's up, everybody? My name is Marlo Greer. I'm getting ready to do my PowerPoint presentation over the artist that I chose, Chester Arthur Barnett, also known as Howlin' Wolf. Bad dude. One of my favorite blues artists for sure. All right, here we go. Howlin' Wolf, blues legend and pioneer. Howlin' Wolf, the early days. He was born Chester Arthur Burnett. He was born June 20th, 1910. He was born in West Point, Mississippi, is also known as White Station. He was brought up on a cotton plantation. There, on the plantation, he was exposed to the music of the area at a young age. Early days continue. He had very humble beginnings. White Station was a plantation. Times there were very difficult for Howlin'. The Mississippi Delta was known for two things: rich soil and poverty. And Howlin' was exposed to both of those things. He was a farmer, and there wasn't a lot of opportunity down on the plantation. But this poverty will be a catalyst for Howlin' down the line. I have a picture here on my slide of a juke joint, which is kind of like a club that Howlin' played at when he was a teenager. It looks like a shack, but it's probably was rocking when he was there. Right? Early days continued. I have, again, a picture of a cotton field that was down where Howlin' was born and where he was beginning to develop, his musical sense and stuff. And it's a tough life. All right. This is a picture of a field that I have of what life was like down on the Delta. The cotton was king, and black folks' hands was the ones that picked it. All right. The music that Howlin' heard was people singing in the fields. So that is kind of how he developed, at least an ear for music. The blues is an understatement for how these people felt. That was just a tough life to be, down on a plantation in a cotton field. All right. Howlin' in West Point, early days continued. Howlin' was a tough young man. He was a big dude, too. He was 6'6", 300 pounds. So when he was a young man, he was 6'3", about 250. And back then, that was huge. His parents were Leon Burnett, and his mother was Gertrude Jones. They named Howlin' after the 21st president of the United States, who was Chester Alan Arthur. And they did that because he campaigned for slave rights, which was a big thing back then. All right, the early days continued. His nickname, Howlin'. Howlin's home life was rough. His mother put him out when he was 13. So soon he went to move with his grandfather. His grandfather's name was John Jones. His grandpa gave Howlin' that nickname. And the story goes that Chester was being bad, and his grandfather told him that if he didn't straighten up, the big bad wolf was going to come and get him and start chasing him around the house. And from that point on, the wolf, that's what they called him. So that nickname stuck. It's a bad nickname, too. He lived up to it. The music in the Delta. Howlin' got his musical start playing the diddley bow. It's a one-string guitar. He also learned how to play the harmonica. Life was tough for Howlin' in White Station. So at 13, he hopped a train and he took it down to the Delta. He ended up at the Morrow and Young plantation, where he was reunited with his father. And his father got him his first guitar in 1928. The music of the Delta continued. Being on the Morrow and Young plantation, it introduced Howlin' to Charlie Patton. And one thing about the Morrow and Young plantation, there were so many jazz legends that came out of that spot. It was just a ton of them. But Charlie Patton, who was, one of the cornerstones in blues music, was there. And that's how Howlin' got his showmanship. That's what Charlie Patton would teach Howlin' at a young age. Later on down the line, Patton would teach him about a song called Pony Blues, and that is a song that Howlin recorded years later, and that was one of his first big songs. Delta music influences. I have a picture here on the right of Charlie Patton. He was a handsome dude, dapper dude, very short too. But Charlie has a big influence on Howlin's style and showmanship. Patton was also an inspiration behind his first recordings, which was Pony Blues. But I just like that picture of Charlie Patton because he was a suave dude. More influences. Another big influence on Howlin's style was Jimmie Rodgers. Jimmie Rodgers was a yodeler, so he played the acoustic guitar and he would yodel. And Howlin had a raspy voice, so he tried to incorporate the yodel with his raspy style, and that set him, to the next level. Okay. Howlin out on the circuit. Howlin had to split time to perform between plowing his father's farm and life on the road. He performed most of the time in the Delta area, so he pretty much stayed down south. He toured with the likes of Johnny Shines. He also toured with Floyd Jones, Sonny Boy Williamson II, Robert Johnson. All of these dudes were just legends at the time. So this was a good point for Howlin in his life as he started to develop his career. And Howlin was kind of old, but I'll get into that a little bit later. He also spent time in the United States Army. So in 1941, he was called to service in the United States Army. Wolf was drafted 8 months before the attack on Pearl Harbor. After 2 years of service, Howlin was honorably discharged. So that was in 1941. A few years later, he got his discharge, and in 1947, he got married to his first wife, Katie Mae Johnson, and they didn't make it. They were married for a few years, but they didn't make it because Howlin was getting ready to move up to Chicago. So that was a big thing for him. So as he starts to move north, he met Sam Phillips, and this is how he got with chess music. Chess music was awesome for blues music. All right, so in 1948 was when Howlin, he was living in West Memphis, Arkansas. When he was there, he was performing with a blues band. They just called themselves Destruction, so they was jamming. On the horizon, Sam Phillips, the owner of Chess Music, was looking for new talent. After hearing Howlin's distinct style, Phillips said that he had to get him, so he signed him up. He was quoted as saying, "This is where the soul of a man never dies." And he was talking about the blues, just awesome, powerful style. So that's when they started to develop their relationship together. Chess music continued. I have a picture here of Sun Records in Chicago. And we had a lesson or a DVD, not a DVD, but a video that we had to watch about Chess Records, and it was really good. So if you go back into some of the lessons, you'll see that. But it was run by Leonard and Phil Chess. They were known as America's greatest blues label. Artists included Howlin' Wolf, Little Walter, Etta James, Chuck Berry, all right, Bo Diddley. All of these people were foundations of blues music. Very powerful people. Chess music continued. This is, about the year 1951. 1951, Howlin and Chess Music started the partnership. Howlin had to move to Chicago to solidify the relationship because he was kind of going back and forth. Howlin was now in his early 40s, so he wasn't a young dude. He was in his 40s when he finally started to get some recognition. After his father died, he knew it was his time to go ahead and make this move because you only live once, so that's what he did. Two of Howland's best tracks put out on tape, How Many More Years and Moaning at Midnight, got the ball rolling for him. People down in the Delta migrated north to Chicago for industrial jobs and for music. So there was a big migration going north. The blues was the music of the Deep South. The Delta couldn't hold the blues for long, so artists sought better opportunities up in Chicago. Howlin' was no different than the rest of those people. So I have a picture here of Howlin' Wolf. He's to the left. Bo Diddley on the far right, and then Muddy Waters. I mean, you can't get any more dope than that. That's just, those are three pillars in blues music. Okay, Chicago, the mecca for the growing blues scene. The move to Chicago was a brilliant one. That was a good move for him. Chess music was there. Howlin' couldn't. He could inject the blues music into the record business. Chicago allowed the blues to have a huge effect on people. So he got a lot of audience, a lot of people to come out and watch him perform. So they could see his showmanship that Charlie Patton taught him. And just the way that his voice, the way he sung was just, it was very, very powerful. So the audiences were very drawn to that. Howlin' was now seizing his opportunities in Chicago. Being a farmer his entire life, the fast-paced Chicago lifestyle took some getting used to. Howlin' was not a very educated man. He was literate, but barely. He needed help, and his new wife, her name was Lily, was there in his corner to kind of keep track of the books and, you know, stuff like that. But he was very good with his money. He wasn't going broke. He was very smart, but he used that money to help, you know, get people in his band that were some of the best to do it. So he was very wise with his money. Howlin' and his connection to the audience. Howlin' didn't need to write sonnets to reach the audience. Just his sheer size and presence. He was a massive dude. Howlin' was able to channel his deepest fears and feelings into his music. All right, with powerful, gut-wrenching style that made him a hero to the audiences and stuff that came to see him. So that's what makes the blues so familiar to people, because everybody can kind of identify with being down or having, you know, just things happen to them. And Howlin' was great at channeling that and putting that into a song. One of the songs that people were really connected to, he had a song called The Tail Dragger, and that was a big time audience favorite. Kind of moving forward into the 1950s, Howlin' was moving and shaking at this point. He formed a new band and got the best guitarists in blues to play with him. So again, that goes back to that money. He was doing well. Hubert Sumlin was the perfect counter to Howlin' and Howlin's powerful, gritty voice. So Hubert, the way that he played and how Howlin' sounded, they just blended together. They were a very, very good team. In 1954, when Sumlin came along, they made this track called Evil Is Going On, and that was a big, big cut for Howlin'. In 1956, Howlin' released one of his most powerful songs, Smokestack Lightning. I was trying my best to get this into the PowerPoint. I couldn't download it. That's just one of my favorite songs. So if you get a chance, check that out. Just his powerful voice, the yodel, the guitar in the background, everything just blends. It's a powerful song. Jimi Hendrix, the Beatles, and the Rolling Stones, they all did remakes of this song. So, you know, Howlin', he had a huge influence on people. More the Wolf. The 50s were some of his most creative years. Some songs, 1957, Somebody in My Home, Sitting on Top of the World. The Natchez Burning, that was a song that he made from events that happened in the 40s where it was a fire in this club called the Rhythm Club, and 209 people and a lot of musicians got killed in that fire. So he made a song that's kind of commemorating them. 60s and 70s. By the 60s, Howlin' was at the top of the game. Chess began to release his albums in 1959. They blew up in Great Britain. He was world famous now. He was 50 years old. So again, he wasn't a young dude. He was in his 50s. Okay, but in 1961, he made the single The Red Rooster, which was covered by the Rolling Stones. Everybody knows who they are. Jimi Hendrix covered this song. And Jimi Hendrix also did a cover of a song called The Killing Floor. And Led Zeppelin, they did a cover of a song called The Lemon Song. 60s and 70s continue, so we're getting deep in here. After Howlin' performed with the Rolling Stones on the show called The Shing-Ding, it was kind of hard for younger audiences to kind of mesh with them, to kind of understand them. So when he got back to the States, he put out this album that he didn't like. But come to find out that that album that he didn't like, it was a huge influence on some of the up-and-coming R&B artists, and later on down the line, some hip-hop artists. Chuck D of Public Enemy, he cited himself as saying that this album that Howlin' didn't like, it was one of his best, and that's what inspired him to kind of get into music. So I thought that was pretty dope. All good things come to an end. Howlin', in his later years, still had a huge influence on a lot of people. So this is like the 70s. Eric Clapton, Ringo Starr, okay, people like that. They listen to his music and develop a lot of style and techniques from the things that he did. He did a song with Eric Clapton and Starr. They collaborated on a song that was called Rockin' Daddy, and that song in 1971 made the top 100. So he's still putting it down. End of a legend. Howlin' performed all the way up to his death on January 10th, 1976 in Hines, Illinois at a VA hospital. The Wolf died from a heart attack, heart failure. A man bigger than life itself left an indelible mark on the world of music, not just the blues. His 6'6", 300-pound stature and shadow still looms over blues and music in general, even now in 2020. So he was a bad dude. So if you get a chance, check out Howlin' Wolf. He is an awesome artist, very influential artist, and one of my favorites. This concludes my presentation. Thanks.